Imagine being locked inside a water-filled glass tank, suspended upside down by your ankles, your wrists bound by heavy iron padlocks. Above you, the clock is ticking. Your lungs are burning, screaming for oxygen. The crowd watches in dead silence, waiting for the exact moment your body gives out. They are not just there to see a trick. They are there to see if today is the day you finally fail. But you never fail. You are the man who can break any chain, pick any lock, and slip out of any prison on earth. You are invincible. Until one day, a single, unexpected blow from a college student brings you to your knees, and you are forced to face the one cell no human being has ever escaped. Death. This is the story of Eric Weiss, a poor immigrant boy who transformed himself into a living legend. This is the story of Harry Houdini, the man who conquered fear, defied physics, and spent his final years hunting ghosts, only to leave behind the greatest unsolved mystery of his own. To understand how a man becomes a myth, we have to look at where he started. Eric Weiss was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1874, but his family soon crossed the ocean to America, searching for a better life. They found poverty instead. Settling in Wisconsin and later New York City, young Eric took on whatever jobs he could to help his family survive. He sold newspapers, shined shoes, and even worked as a champion cross-country runner. But his mind was always somewhere else. He was mesmerized by the traveling circuses, by the trapeze artists, and most importantly, by the magicians. When he discovered the memoirs of the great French illusionist Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin, Eric's fate was sealed. He added an I to his hero's last name, and Harry Houdini was born. But early on, Houdini was not the superstar we know today. He performed simple card tricks in dime museums and sideshows, struggling to make a name for himself alongside his wife and lifelong assistant Bess. The turning point came when he realized that audiences didn't just want to be tricked. They wanted to be thrilled. They wanted danger. Houdini noticed that whenever he performed a simple handcuff escape, the crowd's energy shifted. There was something primal about watching a human being break free from physical restraints. He leaned into this completely. He began walking into local police stations and challenging them to lock him up. He would be strip-searched, shackled with their heaviest irons, and locked in their most secure jail cells. Minutes later, he would casually walk out, handing the stunned police chief his own cuffs. The press went wild. He was dubbed the Handcuff King. But as his fame grew, so did the skepticism, and so did the stakes. It wasn't enough to escape from a jail cell anymore. The public demanded more, and Houdini was all too eager to give it to them. In 1904, the London Daily Mirror challenged him to escape from a specially designed pair of handcuffs that had taken a blacksmith 5 years to create. The locks were supposedly unpickable. A massive crowd gathered at the London Hippodrome. Houdini stepped into a small cabinet with the cuffs locked tightly on his wrists. The audience waited for over an hour. At one point, Houdini emerged, sweating profusely, asking if he could take his coat off so he could keep working. The journalist refused to unlock him, so Houdini calmly grabbed a penknife with his teeth, cut his own coat to shreds, pulled it off, and stepped back into the cabinet. Finally, after an agonizing hour and 10 minutes, he emerged victorious. The crowd absolutely erupted. But as the years passed, handcuffs and jail cells became child's play. The world was changing, moving faster, becoming more cynical. Houdini knew he had to evolve. He began to design escapes that tested the absolute limits of human endurance. He wasn't just escaping from locks, he was escaping from death. He was tightly bound in a straitjacket and hung upside down by his ankles from the roofs of towering skyscrapers, wriggling free while thousands of people watched from the streets below. He had himself securely chained, nailed inside a wooden packing crate, and thrown into the freezing, murky waters of the East River. He introduced the terrifying Chinese water torture cell, where his feet were locked in stocks and he was lowered headfirst into a glass cabinet completely filled with water. Why did people flock to see this? It wasn't just admiration, it was a morbid curiosity. The tension in the theater was thick, suffocating. Every time the curtain closed around that water tank, the audience held its collective breath, genuinely wondering if they were about to witness a drowning. Houdini played on this psychological edge perfectly. He trained his body like an elite athlete, taking ice baths to build a tolerance to freezing water and practicing holding his breath for over 3 minutes. He was a master of his own physiology, a man who had conquered panic. But there was one thing Houdini could not conquer, and that was grief. In 1913, his beloved mother, Cecilia, passed away while he was touring in Europe. Houdini was devastated. He had always been intensely close to her, and her sudden death left a void that no amount of applause could fill. In his desperate need to speak to her one last time, he turned to the booming movement of spiritualism. In the 1920s, after the devastation of the First World War and the Spanish flu pandemic, millions of grieving people were turning to psychics and mediums, hoping to communicate with their lost loved ones. Houdini visited medium after medium, desperately wanting to believe. But because he was the greatest master of deception in the world, he saw right through their tricks. He recognized the hidden wires, the sleight of hand, the trapdoors, and the psychological manipulation. His grief quickly turned into absolute fury. Houdini launched a relentless crusade against fraudulent mediums. He began attending seances in disguise, suddenly leaping up and exposing the tricks right in front of the horrified believers. He offered a massive cash prize to anyone who could demonstrate supernatural abilities that he could not replicate or explain. No one ever claimed the money. This crusade even destroyed his close friendship with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the famous creator of Sherlock Holmes. While Doyle wrote about a brilliant, logical detective in real life, he was an absolute believer in spirits and fairies. Doyle became convinced that Houdini himself had supernatural powers, claiming that Houdini didn't pick locks, but actually dematerialized his body to escape. Houdini fiercely denied this, insisting it was all physical skill and illusion. But Doyle refused to listen. Their friendship ended in a bitter public feud. Houdini was unstoppable. He was exposing frauds, breaking box office records, and living life entirely on his own terms. But fate has a strange sense of humor. The man who had survived being buried alive under 6 feet of earth would be brought down by a seemingly harmless encounter. It was October 1926. Houdini was 52 years old, touring in Montreal, Canada. He was resting in his dressing room at the Princess Theatre reading mail when 2 college students came to visit him. They had heard a rumor that Houdini claimed he could take a punch to the stomach from any man, at any strength, without feeling pain. It was a stunt he had performed before, tightening his incredibly strong abdominal muscles to absorb the impact. One of the students, a young man named J. Gordon Whitehead, asked if the rumor was true. Houdini, distracted and casually lying on a couch, said yes. Without warning, Whitehead leaned in and delivered several incredibly brutal, hammering blows to Houdini's midsection. Houdini hadn't had time to prepare. He hadn't braced himself. The pain was immediate and severe, but Houdini was a showman. He waved the boys off, claiming he was fine. He performed that night. He traveled by train to Detroit the next day in agonizing, blinding pain, developing a massive fever. A doctor examined him and realized the terrible truth. The punches had ruptured Houdini's appendix, which was likely already inflamed. He was suffering from acute peritonitis. The doctor begged him to go to the hospital immediately for emergency surgery. But Harry Houdini never canceled the show. The theater was packed. The audience was waiting. With a temperature of 104 degrees, he took the stage. He barely made it through the performance, collapsing immediately after the final curtain fell. He was finally rushed to the hospital where surgeons operated, but it was too late. The infection had completely ravaged his body. For several days, the great escape artist lay in a hospital bed, fighting the one enemy he could not trick. He turned to his brother, Dash, and whispered his final words, "I'm tired of fighting." On October 31st, 1926 Halloween Day, Harry Houdini passed away. The world was entirely stunned. The man who could escape from steel and concrete had been killed by a punch, but even in death, Houdini had one last trick up his sleeve. Before he died, he and his wife Bess made a secret pact. Houdini promised that if there was any life beyond the grave, if it was truly possible to communicate with the living, he would find a way to reach her. They established a secret code, a specific phrase known only to the two of them, so Bess would know if a medium was genuine or a fraud. The secret message translated to Rosabelle, believe. For the next 10 years, every Halloween night on the anniversary of his death, Bess Houdini held a seance, waiting for a message from her husband. The world watched with bated breath. Mediums tried and failed to guess the code. Year after year, there was only silence. Finally, in 1936, after a highly publicized final seance on the roof of the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood, Bess turned off the solitary candle that had burned beside his photograph for a decade. She announced, 10 years is long enough to wait for any man. Harry Houdini never sent his message. Or perhaps the spiritualists were wrong all along, just as he had proven in life. He didn't need to speak from the beyond to achieve immortality. He achieved it right here on Earth. He left behind a legacy that has never been matched, a name that became synonymous with the impossible. He escaped from handcuffs, straitjackets, water cells, and wooden coffins. And while he could not escape his own mortality, through the sheer force of his will, his brilliance, and his courage, Harry Houdini ultimately escaped being forgotten. If this journey into the past has captivated you, don't forget to leave a like. It's the best way to support this project and keep history alive. To continue unraveling the mysteries of the most fascinating figures who ever walked this earth, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss our next journey through time. Until next time.